Hello there. Thanks for tuning in to your favorite news destination. You're watching In Your Interest. We begin the broadcast today with a breaking development because the Prime Minister has chaired the CCS meeting. Prime Minister Modi has chaired the CCS meeting. The focus was, of course, the West Asian war. Nirmala Sitharaman, Rajnath Singh, the Defence Minister, the Union Home Minister Amit Shah, they were all present at the CCS meet. Some exclusive visuals on your screens. We're talking about the External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, JP Nadda. They were all amongst those present. The Prime Minister chaired the crucial CCS meet to map India's preparedness vis-a-vis the West Asian war, the West Asian conflict. Emphasis certainly on the supply of PNG, the LPG, the fertilizers. Nirmala Sitharaman, Rajnath Singh, Amit Shah, the Finance Minister, the External Affairs Minister, the Home Minister, they're all present at the meet as the Prime Minister chairs this crucial CCS meet, the Cabinet Committee on Security on the West Asian war and what's happening on that front. The emphasis was clear-cut, was on the supply of PNG, on LPG, on fertilizers, the big breaking development that we're tracking for you ahead of our focused segment on the war in West Asia. The United States may be signaling an exit from the Iran war, but it seems like the Gulf is gearing up for a possible entry. And amidst all of this, back at home, the Prime Minister chairs this crucial CCS meeting this evening at 7 LKM. The Finance Minister, the Defence Minister, the Union Home Minister, the External Affairs Minister, JP Nadda, several of those names. There's exclusive pictures on your screens. The Petroleum Minister as well. The Prime Minister chairing this CCS meet to map and understand India's preparedness, the exposure of the oil supply energy shock, and how India can tackle it head on. What can India do more, even as the Iranian crude does signal that it's making its way for the Gujarat port, even as we're looking at Donald Trump signaling that he might be out of Iran, quote unquote, within the next 2 weeks. But what does that mean for India? How will India take on the learning lessons? What's the learning trajectory and the learning curve for India here? And what more can the government do to absorb that shock to help the common citizens of the country? The Prime Minister chairing this CCS meeting. The Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, the Union Home Minister, all crucial figures at the CCS meet. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar also giving a briefing at the CCS meeting at 7 LKM. JP Nadda amongst those present. And the focus certainly on the supply of PNG, the supply of LPG, and more importantly, the fertilizers, which we've been talking about heavily, that it is going to be the Rabi crop, which might become a little bit of a concern, even as the Kharif is all under control. Prime Minister chairs the crucial Cabinet Committee on Security at 7 LKM this very evening. All those important stakeholders and key figures as part of the CCS meet at 7 LKM. Even if the guns fall silent in the 2 weeks, like Donald Trump suggests, the real battle for oil, the energy shock that's being felt here back at home, the trade routes, the maritime control, the Hormuz choke point, all of that, and the aftermath of the West Asian war. What does that mean for India at large? That's another prime concern, and India is leaving no stone unturned when it comes to preparedness, when it comes to really understanding what it means for the Indian diaspora and for India's economy and the trade routes vis-a-vis the West Asian war. Now to our focus segment on In Your Interest. Even as the United States signals that it could very well be exiting from Iran within the next 2 weeks, the Gulf seems to be gearing up for a possible entry. What kind of a military role can the Saudi and the UAE actually play here? And what does Netanyahu essentially mean when he talks about a new kind of alliance? Is it going to be Gulf plus Israel versus Iran? Even as United Kingdom now looking at 35 nations joining in, signing that statement of intent to unchoke the Strait of Hormuz. And an esteemed set of panelists with us on the broadcast. And for decades, the stability of the global economy that has rested on a simple, unspoken agreement. The United States protects the flow of oil through the Middle East, and the Gulf nations provide the world's energy. But now, that agreement is in tatters. Even as the Prime Minister chairs that crucial CCS meeting at 7 LKM this evening, United States has made it clear that the Strait of Hormuz is not their headache anymore. Fend for your own oil, says Donald Trump, and that they're packing up after setting the region on fire, asking others to go on and firefight. We're seeing a historic and a dangerous shift in West Asia. America's traditional allies, nations like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, are moving away from quiet diplomacy and preparing for open conflict. They're no longer waiting for Washington to take the lead. The United Arab Emirates says it is ready to use force and is preparing to join possible US-led operations. Also backing them in the United States' United Nations Security Council, beg your pardon. At the same time, you've got Saudi Arabia that is taking a strong line, saying the conflict must continue until Iran's regime is weakened. Bahrain, which hosts the United States' Fifth Fleet, is calling for the United Nations Security Council to approve the use of force, sponsoring that US resolution. These Gulf countries lobbying the United States, Europe, and Asian nations to form a global military coalition. What could that mean for the entire region? And there are even signs that some Gulf states may put boots on the ground to secure islands and take direct combat roles. All of this is happening and comes on the back of President Donald Trump openly mocking his NATO allies. In strong words, he's told them to go to the strait themselves and take the oil if it's necessary. For jet fuel, either buy it from the United States or gather some delayed courage, is what he says, and go to the strait and take it. He says the United States will not be there anymore, that Iran has already been decimated, and that the hard part has been done by the United States. Well, Donald Trump has also made it clear that the strait is not America's problem and that others should now step up to open it whilst the United States leaves very soon. From London, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer made it clear that while they will avoid direct military involvement, his country is in talks with other countries, 35 of them, on reopening the strait.
This is not our war. We will not be drawn into the conflict. That is not in our national interest. And the most effective way we can support the cost of living in Britain is to push for de-escalation in the Middle East and a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which is such a vital route for energy.
For the rest of the world, nearly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through these maritime corridors, and we're already seeing the tremors in the global economy. Crude prices are surging, and that means inflation and higher fuel costs for everyone. It's not just about oil. It's about food chains. It's about fertilizers that the developing world depends on. And if these trade routes are blocked, the cost of living will skyrocket across the world. For the Gulf economies themselves, the risk is massive. A direct conflict would devastate investor confidence, end the tourism boom, and put millions of jobs at risk. And for India, this is a nightmarish kind of a scenario. New Delhi is currently walking on a very thin tightrope. On one hand, we have deep energy and strategic ties with Iran. On the other, our relationship with the Gulf states and the United States has never been stronger. Millions of Indians live and work in the Gulf, sending back billions in remittances that support our economy. If the war breaks out, the safety of our diaspora becomes the first priority. And India is currently using quiet diplomacy, which certainly is the right way at this point to de-escalate the situation, whilst simultaneously preparing evacuation plans just in case the ticking time bomb finally goes off. Big questions that we're asking on the broadcast tonight. If the United States completely withdraws, can the Gulf nations actually sustain a high-intensity conflict against Iran on their own? With global inflation already high, can the world economy survive a prolonged disruption of the Strait of Hormuz, or are we looking at a mandatory global recession? And as the region splits into warring camps, How long can India maintain its policy of multi-alignment before it is forced to choose a side to protect its energy interests? With us on the broadcast to help us understand the diplomatic and the global response, Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former Indian diplomat. Many thanks, Ambassador, for taking out the time. Major General Sanjay Soy to help us understand the operations of the ground reality defense and geopolitical expert, and Professor Rajan Kumar, School of International Studies, JNU, for the macro, the energy and the strategy. Ambassador, first and foremost, what does Netanyahu essentially mean when he says we're looking at new alliances in the Gulf? We've already been speaking about how the United States has been doing the Israel's bidding. If Gulf nations step in militarily, 19th March, Saudi Arabia said, do not underestimate us. We've got massive military capabilities. The UAE is mulling some sort of military action. If the Gulf nations do step in militarily to reopen the Hormuz, does this risk turning a US-Iran conflict into another Gulf war, a third of its kind? What's your reading, ma'am?
My reading is that I am very skeptical of all these pronouncements from the UAE and Saudi Arabia. So I'll ask a simple question, Karthik, here, that if Saudi Arabia has such great military prowess, then why did it enter into a defense pact with Pakistan in the first place? It has in the past also, right? Pakistan. And the Pakistanis earlier had backed off because their army is not divided on Shia-Sunni lines. It's integrated. And the Saudis want only Sunnis, not Shias, for them. Secondly, I'm equally skeptical about the military prowess of the UAE. I do believe that Netanyahu is saying it because he must be extremely disappointed in President Trump saying that in 2 weeks' time, he'll be gone. And so he's doing this to put pressure on Iran so that he can extract his last piece of whatever self-interest that he can before he also withdraws from Iran, because it's very clear that the regime change that Iran wanted and inveigled Trump into joining has not taken place and will not take place. On the other hand, the Gulf countries probably are using this message of putting boots on the ground to pressure Iran to stop targeting them.
Okay.
Since they had made it clear from the beginning that they were not in this war and that they would not allow American bases in their countries to be used against Iran. So now they are trying to say to the Iranians, you've gone too far. You are actually damaging and destroying our economies. If you don't stop, we would be forced to take some countermeasures. So these are all pressure tactics that once Trump withdraws, the conflict will cool down over the next couple of weeks, because it was Trump who created the conflict. It was Trump who took out the leadership. It was Trump who boasted that he has decimated Iran. And therefore, Trump's conflict, once Trump is gone, the conflict will cool down in any case. As far as the Security Council resolution is concerned, it will be vetoed by China and by Russia. And finally, as we talk, the Pakistanis are allied with the Chinese. They've come out with a kind of peace plan. On the other hand, they are in a defense pact with Saudi Arabia. So it is Saudi Arabia that is in a very delicate situation, because Saudi Arabia is allied to the United States and not with China. As far as we are concerned, we have to continue to play the diplomatic tightrope. We have more than 10 million Indians there. Most of them do not want to come back. They believe things will cool down. Even the Indians who are in Iran have said they want to finish their medical exams and then come back. So I think the Indians, there will be no mass migration. I think our government has handled it coolly and calmly, and there is also no mass panic in India as we talk.
Okay, all right. And of course, the Prime Minister chairing that CCS meet and all the interministerial briefings, it's of course sign of great confidence that the government knows things are under control and it knows what needs to do on the preparedness front. General Soy, come in on this, the cleaning of mines, because if we were to go back to the pre-war levels, that would take a lot of time, a lot of stabilization times. There's a lot of mines at play, the Maham 3, the Maham 7 at, in the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, it's about 33 kilometers. You've got got a 3.2 and a 3.7 kilometer, maritime corridor that's actually accessible. So help the viewers understand if, clearing the mines does take place in the Strait of Hormuz, how complex and dangerous of a task will this be? When UK Prime Minister says that we've got 35 nations on board, will they all finally send their support to the Strait of Hormuz, just like Donald Trump was saying, or is it going to be another NATO disappointment for the US president?
So first of all, the mine clearance will only be possible once the Strait of Hormuz is cleared, and it is all cleared by Iran. They permit it. So some sort of agreement has to be there before. Without that, because Iran can interfere with the mine clearance operation from the banks, even if their navy is destroyed by drones, missiles, or their artillery fire. Secondly, laying of mine is easier. Removing mine, Kabir, as you rightly brought out, is very, very challenging task. Each mine may take week, and there are different types of mines. Something are floating, some are fully submerged, some are partly submerged. Different types of mines are there, and each mine, some are a kinetic mines, some are, which they explode on signals. So there are different types. So it is a very, very complex operation, and it can take months altogether. It is not easy, and that's why it is a big challenge. These countries may not come. I don't think so. They will come in the initial stage of clearing of Strait of Hormuz. They may join hands subsequently after the Strait of Hormuz is agreed upon to open, and whether by force or by agreement, then only for mine clearance and for to ensure security of the container ships and merchant ships, then they can come into play. Before that, I don't think so. They will agree for boots on ground. They, as Ambassador had brought out, there is a challenge of their military capability, the challenge of their war experience, the challenge of their training, and they are all dependent on US hardware. Most of it is from US, and in Saudi Arabia, some is from France and some is from Britain. So, and quite a large number of those have been used during the strikes by the ballistic missile attacks and drone attacks. So air defense, as far as air defense missile is concerned, quite a large number has been utilized. There's a crisis there also. So I don't think so that they will put boots on ground. They would definitely provide a moral support. They may help in subsequent clearance of mine. Kabir.
Okay, many thanks, General, for helping us on that particular front. But, even if the fighting does stop tomorrow, let's say, Professor Kumar, come in on this. Experts say 6 to 8 weeks is the minimum time that it will take for any kind of normalization. What are some of the biggest bottlenecks in restoring the global oil supply? Because with these very large crude containers and the rates that are skyrocketing, I've got some details with me. $400,000 a day for a VLCC cost. India paid about $70,000 a day for a trade ship that came our way. Then you've got the fuel, you've got the port charges, you've got the canal costs. If these costs are skyrocketing and insurance risks are rising, the real pressure point is now becoming economic more than military. So how long, if the war stops tomorrow, what are the bottlenecks and how long before things get normal to the pre-war levels?
Kabir, thank you for having me here, but I do not really think that war is going to stop tomorrow or day after tomorrow.
Hypothetically, sir. Hypothetically, Professor.
Yes, I get it. I'll come to that, but let me put the things in perspective so that you have a better idea of the US strategic thinking at the moment. US is, facing several dilemmas at this moment. The first, if I tell you from international politics perspective, so the first is the fear of entrapment, because if it sends its troop on the ground, it fears that it's going to be very long-term entrapment in the entire conflict. The second is the fear of what you call abandonment. When the NATO countries are saying that they are not going to cooperate, this is not their war. It has been started without discussing in the NATO with the NATO members, etc. So there is a fear of abandonment where these countries, NATO countries, and many of the allies, which traditionally United States used to take it as granted that they will come to the rescue of United States and in support of, so they are not coming. So the fear of abandonment, being abandoned by your friend, that's one of the greatest fear. And the third is the total global cost, also from the US cost and the global cost. And it can be, from the leadership's perspective of the United States, it can be a real loss of face if Trump decides to, withdraw from the war tomorrow or without any decisive victory. And let me also assure you that it's very unlikely that U.S. will get any kind of real victory from this war. But yes, Trump is used to claiming victory and taking credit for every possible thing in the world. So he will do it. But U.S. is getting entrapped. That's the reality. And if U.S. withdraws withdraws tomorrow, so let me tell you that it's going to be chaos in West Asia. Why? Because Iran will be the most important influential power in West Asia from tomorrow. So that U.S. and even the Western countries in general, they do not want that to happen. The allies of the West, the regional allies of the West, be it Bahrain, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they would be entrapped because Iran would start dominating the politics, and it will create a chaos in Israel also because Israel will be threatened. So I don't see that at this point of time US is going to withdraw. Also, US does not have anything to show to its people. As you know, 62% of the people are against Trump's war. So US has nothing to show. That the American are debating that by spending around more than $30
There's
billion.
an address to the nation by the US president tomorrow morning. Marco Rubio speaking to in an international news agency said the goalpost seems to be shifting far too quick, thick and fast. He said there are 4 objectives: decimating their navy. We've done that. Now we're on to factories and missiles. We're just about there. Another week's time. It's not going to be taking months. Another week, and then we're done with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the claims that he'll make some claims, and we are used to his claims and counterclaims. But in reality, he does not have anything concrete to show to his people. The debates in US is that US spent more than $30 billion to kill a person who is 86 years old, and the regime survives, and you are claiming that this regime change. So people are questioning Trump's policy. You had this protest a day before, no king, no monarch kind of protest, etc. And this is going to intensify if the results.
Seems like alarm bells, and the midterms are right around the corner for Donald Trump domestically. Ambassador, let's throw some light again on Donald Trump's "go get your own oil" remark. Let me just read one of those truths that he put out just a couple of minutes back. He says Iran's new regime president, much less radicalized and far more intelligent than his predecessors, has just asked the United States of America for a ceasefire, is what the United States is claiming, or the president of the US is claiming. It seems like doublespeak. He says one thing, Washington says another. We will consider when Hormuz Strait is open, free and clear. Until yesterday, the Hormuz was deprioritized, not anymore. Until then, we are blasting Iran into oblivion, or as they say, back to the Stone Ages. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. Now, this "go get your own oil" remark, Ambassador Mukherjee, does this mark a deeper fracture between the United States and his traditional allies? He's been, saying it far too many times that he's disappointed with his NATO allies.
Well, obviously, they have humiliated him and told him clearly that it's not their war. So he's making it clear to them that he doesn't care if the Straits of Hormuz remain choked, because the United States is self-sufficient in oil and natural gas. So he's trying to say that you didn't support me, telling the Gulf states you didn't pay enough. Now it's no longer my war. I have done what I want, which is I've taken out that 86-year-old man in the most heinous and cruel way. I have broken international law. I have attacked Iran's nuclear sites. I killed women and children. I have created war crimes. I have made United States into a pariah state in the United Nations. I have achieved everything I wanted to do. So he will claim victory like he did for Operation Sindoor. He kept saying, he still says that because of him, that Op Sindoor stopped, and the Pakistanis even nominated him for Nobel Peace Prize. So we should get a Nobel War Prize. And we should nominate him for a Nobel War Prize. But in the meantime, Kabir, and sorry for having given you the wrong name earlier, I just wanted to say that he will leave not tomorrow or day after. He will leave in 2 weeks, and he will claim that whatever was US intention, he has achieved, and he will claim victory. And he will say, for the rest, it's your problem.
No, you're right.
Your own oil. That's it. That is what he's going to do.
I still remember one of those first, briefings by the Secretary of War of the United States, Pete Hegseth. He said there are no objectives, there are no outcomes. The president is shaping the outcomes as we go. So just like Professor, Rajan told us, in about 2 weeks' time, he's going to rummage up some objective and tell the United States that this is what I set out to do. And hey, look, I've been able to do this. Now, coming back to Saudi Arabia and the UAE mulling some sort of military action that, you helped us understand in your opening submissions as well, Ambassador. General Soy, if the UAE and Saudi Arabia deploy their forces, what kind of military role are they going to be able to actually play against an Iran that's been able to delay and bleed a big superpower like the United States? Is it going to be against their naval? Is it going to be logistically? Is it going to be direct combat? What does history tell us? What do the numbers tell us?
Present, if you see that they are divided by the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman from both sides, and the situation is actually quite desperate. So they have been defensive so far. Whether they go in offensive, that's a big question, because as I mentioned, only thing they can do is probably if Iran launches with missile and drone attacks, they also launch some sort of attack and complement and add on to the attacks by Americans and Israel and carry out aerial attacks on Iran's facilities. So that is all at present I feel they can do, because sending the ground troops is a very, very challenging thing at present. And probably second thing they can do is at present officially provide bases. Bases already there that to support to the US and to carry out attacks on their soil. Thirdly, what they can do is at mine clearance after the Strait of Hormuz is open. So at present, the tricky situation is when and how the Strait of Hormuz will open. And second thing is, since President Trump has declared in 2 to 3 weeks, I think he may again change the dates. He said earlier 4 weeks, no, another 2 to 3 weeks. After that, it may go to another 6 weeks. So he has already lost trust of his allies. What we have seen in NATO countries, they are not trusting him, they are not supporting him. The Middle East countries also, whether they'll come or is it just a talk on ground, whether implementation would be there, that is a big question. How much implementation would be there? That's a big question as far as I am concerned. Kabir.
Okay, many thanks, General. Professor, I've got some breaking developments that we're tracking. Source-based information is telling us that Donald Trump has now directed J.D. Vance, the vice president, because, hey, Steve Witkoff is now completely out of the picture. J.D. Vance to communicate privately that he is open to a ceasefire as long as certain US demands are met, including the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. There's a warning here as well. I don't know what kind of impact this warning is having on the Iranian new regime, which seems to be more intelligent and less radicalized than their predecessors. Vance delivered a stern message that Donald Trump was impatient and warned of growing pressure on Iranian infrastructure unless Iranians make a deal. What do you make of these developments? How do you read this?
I think, yes, they are trying to negotiate through Pakistan, Qatar and some other countries, as you know.
But doesn't it look like the United States is more impatient for a deal than Iran at this point in time?
No, in diplomacy, you don't go by words. What Trump says, you can never trust him, because he might be having some other plans. He might be saying something and doing exactly opposite of that. That we have seen in the Venezuela, that we have seen in the Iran. So not to be taken at the face value, number one. But yes, US is certainly looking for exit, and that I can tell you. But the problem is that if US exits at this point of time, also let me tell you that negotiations are not possible, even if Pakistan provide the space and mediation facilities, infrastructure, etc. I don't think, because the kind of maximalist demands that Iran has put, and also the way United States has put on Iran, so those kind of is unlikely to be negotiated. What is likely to happen at this point, that US will try to get some concessions for a while, either through capturing the Kurg or some other island of Iran, because it has to. Trump administration has to show something back to the people without saying that he's not going to go back. Also, let me tell you, But yes, he is kind of, the conflict of in his mind is dilemma about in case there is some, soldiers are sent there and there is some of the body bags start going back to US. So then that would be a real challenge because so he's dealing with that issue. So he would like these countries, the Saudi Arab or Israel or UAE, to launch the what he calls ground attack, and US would be supporting security, etc. from the back. I think that's what he might be planning, but we don't really know for sure. And also UAE is a very small country, not a very powerful military, under the protection of primarily United States. Same is the case with Saudi Arabia. And also the public sentiment in these countries might erupt in case these countries decide to attack Iran. Let me tell you, it's not going to be easy either for Pakistan or for any other country, UAE and Saudi Arabia especially, because people know that this is not their war, this is the war of Israel, and they should not be fighting the war of Israel because they do not want Israel to be dominating the geopolitics of this what you call this West Asia after US withdraws. So those are the concerns, and I think the war, neither negotiation I see happening coming to fruition at this point of time.
Yeah.
Yes, JD Vance, let me tell you, is not liked by Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister,
Yeah.
because he is considered to be a slightly soft liner compared to Hegseth and other people. So yes, but he's in touch with Pakistan and a lot of
You're
other
absolutely
leaders.
right. And even as Ishaq Dar visited Beijing just a couple of days back, you're absolutely right. And JD Vance also gave his peace of mind, quote unquote, to the Israeli counterparts, helping them understand what their agenda is, because they've been digressing and diverging on two different fronts. Look at what Israel's been doing in southern Lebanon for the last week or so. So it's going to be very interesting to see where this actually goes. You're of the opinion that these talks are not, turning into any kind of fruition, at least not for now. Final 20 seconds, General. Would you want to add to that?
Yeah, just wanted to say what he has brought out. In case US withdraws without any significant gain or without showing the significant gain to the people or to the world, the vacuum will be filled, I feel, by the China, and they are sitting on the sidelines, and the trust of the Gulf countries they will lose trust in the US to protect them. And I think China is the one country because they have high stakes in Iran, and similar case to Russia. If Iran goes, then Russia is a
And
big
they've been
loser.
able to call the shots as well. You need the Russian ambassador to Iran that's told the world finally where Mojtaba Khamenei is. I mean, that helps us understand who's really pulling the strings and where. Many thanks, gentlemen. Many thanks, Ambassador, for taking out the time and helping us understand your insightful inputs. Wars can end with ceasefires, but crises like these, they linger far longer in supply chain. So the question now is not just about who wins the war, but who controls the peace that follows. That's all the time on the first segment on IYI. A quick break and our second segment right on the other side.